everyone. Okay, welcome to Improve Learning, Persistence, and Retention through Building Belonging in Your Adult Ed classrooms. And I want to unpack that for real quickly because I went through it quickly. But we're going to focus on learning. How do you set up a learning so that students can learn to persist in addition to their content they're learning, but also learning the life skill, the work skill of persisting. And that is going to lead to retention because if they can persist, if they can see that their needs are being met, if they understand their why, then they're going to come back, hopefully, and they'll be retained. And my name is Sarah Goldhammer. I'm here with my partner in crime, Tara Schwab. Rhyming names is just one of the benefits that we offer to you. Our mothers planned it many years ago. We work together, we're friends, we're colleagues. We're from the Southern Illinois Professional Development Center, part of the Illinois Professional Development Network. So we are really happy to be here with you today. Tara and I do a lot of training in our state we use a lot of universal design for learning. We have other trainings that really help teachers and others. We work with administrators and career navigators to really think about how are we reaching and teaching on all levels to the people that we are serving. So there we go. Okay, so our agenda for today, and this is not going to be completely linear, so we're just telling you right now that we're going to talk about the why of belonging, and we're going to start with the story as we like to do because our brains are wired to remember whenever things are given to us in a narrative, in a story, and connecting information. So we're going to start with that. We're going to talk about the student perspective, and we're going to encourage you to always think about the student perspective because when we're thinking about creating belonging in a classroom, we need to understand who they are, what they need, and that includes you as the learners today. We're all learners, and so thinking about how you want to learn, and that leads me to one of the things that we provided for you today that we hope is helpful, and that is a very comprehensive note page. And so some of you in the room have a paper copy. Feel free to use that. In the Whova app, so those of you that both in the room and our virtual attendees, the Whova app has that document. You can download it if you want to and download it later. There's also a QR code that'll take you to a Google Doc. It's going to ask you to make a copy of that Google Doc so that you can write on it. Okay, so those are all the different ways that we've designed for variability for our attendees today, and we want to think about that in the future. We're going to share a few research principles that support the importance of creating a belonging classroom, and then we're going to particularly talk about UDL, Universal Design for Learning. So I'm just going to ask right now, both my virtual attendees and my in-room attendees, who is a UDL enthusiast? Raise your hand. For the virtual people, put it in the chat, shout out, just put UDL, rocks, or any other word after that you feel is appropriate. So we are going to talk about that. It's not a deep dive, but just a little bit and making that connection for those of you. So if you're not a UDL enthusiast, that's fine. We're going to try to bring you over to our side, though, just full disclosure on that. And then we're going to talk quite a bit about replicable practices and application because we believe that we all come here wanting to take home something we can use right away. So that is happening for us. And I'm going to use all my fancy tools. All right, so we're going to start with a story, as I promised you that we were going to do. And I mentioned to you that Tara and I do some training across our state. So this is a story from one of our teachers. After she went back and tried some of the things that we had in our UDL training specifically, this is, and it, Tara, is it, I got to do that. Can we move this toolbar so it's not? Look, yes, success. So that it's not covering up. Teach skills in a way that acknowledge you see your learners, that you know who they are. So I am going to read you a very quick story. And Kelly Meyer, anybody here know Kelly Meyer? Awesome, you'd love her. An already creative and innovative teacher from Lewis and Clark Community College in Godfrey, Illinois. For those of you who want a little history or a geography lesson, that's about 30 minutes from St. Louis, Missouri, provided thoughts on how she is incorporating what she learned about a UDL. Kelly said, we do some of the greatest icebreakers with our students where we learn tons about their interests and hobbies. But do we make good use of that valuable info, or do we file it away, never to be seen again? Welcome. Make use of those hobbies, this is still Kelly talking, and interests with the power of the internet and work examples into your lessons. Sure, we can kick off a lesson about graphs by showing a graph, or about graphs by showing a graph of Sally's apple buying, and she follows that with a bunch of zzz, boring. But what about graphs of your students' favorite artists and their album sales? What about a graph showing the latest Marvel movie sales? The possibilities are endless to get buy-in, and make sure that our students are really heard. Some students send Kelly requests. Can you find a way to work Juice World into a future lesson? He's my favorite artist. Uncle Google and Aunt YouTube will be the best friends of this. Search for both the internet and the skill in the same search line. With any luck, you might just strike gold. So that's inspiration from Kelly. Hmm. Yeah. There we go. That's the quote from Kelly's student. How many of you think that Kelly's students feel like they belong in her classroom? You don't know Kelly, right? You just heard, Bo, what Kelly's students are saying to her. What has Kelly done in her classroom? She not only has created an environment where students feel heard and valued, they're coming to her. They're empowered to ask their teacher, hey, can you do this? Because they're telling her, if you do this, I'm going to be engaged. They may not use that word, but I'm going to be motivated. It's going to have meaning to me. So there's Kelly's student. So that's going to be our mantra throughout the next hour, is thinking about how do we do that? Because I know some of you are sitting there going, you know, Sarah, we got a lot to cover. We got a lot to cover. How do I have time for this? We're going to talk about how you have time for this, and we're just really going to encourage you, if you make time at the beginning, it's going to give you time later on, because your students are they're going to tell you what they want. And that leads us to our next quote. This also was from a different teacher, a whole different part of the state. And this is what and did some of the ideas that we had for her. This is what one of the students said. We're going to give you some more context later. We're going to come back to us. But they said, if someone had just asked me what I needed back when I was in high school, I would have told them, and it would have made all the difference. And that sounds overly simplistic, but again, creating that environment and asking people is going to take us a long, long way. Okay, so. Okay, so as we move on, you're looking and saying, oh man, they got a lot of tech issues because now they got a blank screen. No, it's supposed to be blank. Good news for all of us. So I want you to go on a little journey with me for a minute, okay? If you feel comfortable, I want you to close your eyes and imagine. And if you don't feel comfortable, keep them open. For those of you who are virtual attendees, I'm asking you to do this as well, because I'm going to help you really think about the value of belonging. So imagine with me and fill that screen metaphorically with your thoughts. When is a time that you haven't been included? Why? Who didn't include you? And what did you want that person or people to know about this situation? How did it make you feel? And what was the result of being excluded? Okay, open your eyes. And now, and I hope, and again, as I didn't preface this, but I hope that those questions weren't too painful, because sometimes being excluded can be an extremely painful situation. But I want to ask you a final question. What was lost because you weren't included? Is anybody willing to share, just briefly, very briefly, like just one sentence, what was lost because you weren't you weren't included? And we're going to run to the back of the room.
I think it's one word, time.
Time.
Time was lost because we're sitting there thinking, well, why aren't I with them? And I'm not doing anything because I'm thinking, poor me.
Okay. Anybody else? What was lost?
Confidence.
Nice. Sorry.
Engagement.
Engagement. Okay.
I would say opportunity.
Opportunity. And I'm gonna end on that one because here's the deal. We live in a very complicated world and we need everybody. We need everybody to solve the problems, to be part of the brain trust, to be able to know enough, to be able to share and solve the issues of the day. So when we create a belonging community, you're making sure that that student is included. They get the training that they need, they get the education that they need, that they can make a difference in the world. So that's all we're talking about this morning, is just how important that is. Okay.
We did call the tech person. They don't see us, but he said he was calling Zoom tech. So, yep.
Steve.
I'm just wearing a lot.
Okay. All right, so we're going to carry on. It's like the Wizard of Oz. Don't pay attention to that guy up there. All right? I'm going to try my best to keep you engaged and not Steve. All right, so the last thing that we're going to talk about before I turn it over to Tara, and we're going to rock and roll through some of our content, is I want to make sure that you know your why, and I'd love to know a few of yours whys, because number one, this is the first session of the conference. You have committed to be here, which we really appreciate. Come on in. Got plenty of room. You can front row, front row. She's looking at me like, no way, not good. No, you're coming. No, going second row. Okay, good. So how can you get out of this next hour what you need to be worth your time? So what's your why? And again, while you're thinking of that, I'm going to tell you a couple of reasons why we're doing this, and maybe you already know, which is fine, but it's always good to validate what you're doing. And if you don't, when you tell your brain what you're trying to accomplish, you are much more likely to be engaged, number one. Number two, you're much more likely to resonate with something that is said, so it helps you in that way. And third of all, because I'm going to ask a few of you what your why is, it's going to help Tara and me to set the stage that if there's something that we can make sure that we include so that you get what you want, we're going to do that. And we're also telling you we want to address what you want to know. Now, if you're sitting there going, well, Sarah, I might ask for something crazy that you can't, that's valid. But I can at least know what your needs are. And if it's not in the scope of the next hour, I can perhaps suggest a reading for you, some research for you, or connect with you later. So again, that's just saying, yes, I honor what you want. So is anybody willing to share either in get out of this session? Again, really just short. It doesn't have to be a dissertation. I don't know. One other engagement I didn't tell you is we do have for people who have shared. So shared.
Our AE students.
For me, I don't know how to do that. Okay. All right.
So I already feel like I share strategies to engage staff in this process. So almost to replicate what you're sharing with us.
That is awesome, and we love that, and I'm headed that way. And I will tell you, we have bonus content at the end that I'm not promising we're going to get to, that's specifically about meetings and that kind of thing. So if we don't get to all that, I'll be happy to share that with anybody.
I'm going to build on what she said. I'm from the state staff, and my agency recently included belonging in their new strategic plan. And we are actively, as an agency, developing, sorry, I'm in dissertation mode. We are actively working on internal work groups to address each aspect of our new strategic plan. And I'm on the belonging group. And so I'm new to this topic, and I'm here to learn as much as I can, because I think as a state, we are also starting on this belonging journey, which better late than never, but also seeing what I can bring back for my agency and my team as well.
Awesome. How many of you know that your students all just come right into adult education and they know that this is where they should be and they feel completely confident and okay. So now you know why we need to talk about this, right? Okay, one more why. One more why. Don't make eye contact. Here you are.
I work with multicultural students, and a lot of them come from traumatic histories, and they're not comfortable sharing their stories. So I'd like to be able to help them feel like they belong without having to reveal a lot about themselves. So kind of welcoming them without prying and intruding too much.
That is awesome. Thank you for that. And actually, we're going to share one of the things that we've done recently in our state is a learning community that we had a teacher talk about how to engage with students who have a lot of trauma in their background. So that is great. Is there anything from the virtual audience, Tara, okay. Okay, all right. So now I'm going to turn it over to Tara.
Hello, and much of what we're going to talk about, we can extend to both students, staff, each other as teachers. So we can all kind of be thinking about that. And now that we know that we're from all, different in terms of like our why, we'll definitely try to give examples throughout. So kind of back to the idea of research, we're going to put up a couple of quotes and articles here, and I'll move the Zoom thing around as I can to try to make this better. And we also included these articles in the notes that we provided for you both virtually so that you have live links if you'd like to access any of this. So learning communities, this is one way to really extend belonging to people. And I will say for the staff throughout our state, they have made a world of difference for us. We have virtual learning communities each month. We have a retention virtual learning community. We have an IET virtual learning community, a bridge virtual learning community, a corrections virtual learning community. So we come up with different topics. Heather and I were talking about we were together last night and we were talking about maybe having some new virtual learning communities for teachers that are around different topics. So think of extending that to students as well. We can really build those communities and promote belonging for our students. And so something to think about. And then on the next slide, maybe. Oh, I was on the toolbar, that's why. So I'm not going to read this quote to you, but I am going to help frame it a bit here for when you're reading it. Please look for, and we'd love to hear as a group, what words stick out to you in this quote. And I'll give you a little bit to read it. Would anyone like to share?
I really think the protective factor, we've found that like our adult learning center is a safe place for a lot of our students, a lot of our like 16, 17-year-old GED students, and as well as our EL students that are coming, like as refugees, like they'll come early and just hang out in the hallway, even whether their friends are there or not, just knowing that we're there and that our doors are open. So like that it's a safe space for them.
A safe, yes, awesome. That's the word that stuck out to me too. I totally agree. Anyone else? Okay. Well, thank you. All right. So we talked about UDL. These are the UDL guidelines, and they are linked in your notes. We definitely encourage you to go to the UDL guidelines. They're clickable, so you can explore what they're all about. It's basically providing options to engage students, to represent material, and to allow them to show what they know. And a huge part of our efforts to promote belonging and to increase persistence and retention all fit in the UDL guidelines. And they've been recently updated, and they clearly say fostering belonging and community. So these practices are grounded in UDL. So when we're starting a class, a meeting, a webinar, so for students, for teachers, for staff, we can plan for options for promoting belonging and always tell people why. For example, hey, this is why I'm turning on the closed captions. It is for people who might be hard of hearing. It's also for your students who might have loud kids in the background. They'll be just as useful to you. It could be for another staff member who has students coming in and out of the office, but you want them to be able to be on the meeting and see what they can. So always tell them why you're giving these options. Are you recording? Where is it going to be posted? Where can they access the material if they get a phone call and they have to go? Because we're all adults. Our students are, our colleagues are. Can people post in the chat if they're not able to unmute because of something? Maybe they're driving, you know? Where will you be sharing the slides and the links so people aren't spending their cognitive energy on that versus being engaged in the meeting? So we can really, all these things promote belonging. They break down barriers, and the options that I just said and some of the examples, they're not the entirety of UDL, but they are certainly things that we might not think about it, but they're promoting belonging. You still belong here, even though you're busy. There's all these options for you that we're providing, and that's why, so that you can access this material and learn from it along with the group. Okay, different ways to infuse UDL into the classroom. So in your notes, if you're following along in the notes, these next few slides will be in the sort of like the same box, because they're all about the different ideas for engagement and building a sense of community and belonging, just replicable, quick practices that you can do. And we'd love to hear too, if these are some things that you're already doing and you have some examples, please feel free to raise your hand, or virtual attendees you can share in the chat. So you can this is supposed to be like making a short video with a screen capture for students to view in a setting and time of their choice. So like, do you have a learning management system and you have some short videos that are recorded that students can access, little bite-sized pieces of learning related? How about exit tickets? This is not really anything new for a lot of us, for students, but we can do it for meetings too. What are you still confused about? What do you need some more information about? How can my center as a professional development center support you more about this after this meeting? So think about how else you could use exit tickets. Also, the goals for the day. So did you clearly communicate in the agenda? And we'll talk about that a lot if we get to talking about meetings. That certainly promotes belonging, telling people, what are we going to be doing? Can your students see it? Is the agenda on the board? Is it communicated in your learning management system? These are things for us all to think about, and they're definitely infusing UDL and certainly promoting belonging and persistence and retention. Okay. Sarah, I'm going to pass it off to you, and I will watch the virtual attendees.
I was so busy listening to Tara that I was like, oh, I'm up. I didn't know I was up. Okay, awesome. Yeah, there's a raised hand. Robin, as a virtual attendee, if you have a question, please put that in the chat and we will be glad, or a comment. Yeah. Okay. Don't be alarmed by what's on the screen now. We are teaching content, but if we think about the fact that first and foremost, we're teaching people. That's really important, and that changes our entire perspective. It's a small shift, but it's the shift that means everything. And with some of the things that Tara was talking about in UDL and how we're designing our classrooms or our meetings or our trainings, it's all the difference. If we're thinking about, if we know the people that we serve, at least know them well enough to know what their goals are, what their needs are, what their challenges are, then that changes how we're going to instruct with them. And I can tell you that there's a lot of work now in customer-centered design, human-centered design. If you happen to work with your WEO partners in your state, and that's a whole nother conversation, but they also are working a lot of, they might call it customer-centered design, but that's the same thing. It's thinking of the human first and what their needs are. And how do we know that? We ask them, we know them. Okay, Tara, I don't know why this is not advancing. Do you know? And we've got another raised hand also. Oh, there you go. And I think it's because whenever I move to change this, there we go. All right. So here's, Tara said exit tickets aren't new, and they're not. How many of you have used an exit ticket before? Okay. How many of you do some type of an icebreaker or introduction for your students on day 1 or day 2? How many do that? Okay, same in the virtual. Raise your hand or put, yep, I do it. Because I want to call out, because one of the things that we want to do in addition to showing you some replicable strategies is also to call out, spotlight, validate what you're doing. And maybe you're not even thinking of it as a belonging strategy, but it is. Whenever a student comes in and gets the chance to introduce themselves and take a page from Kelly Meyer's book, we need to do something with the information that they share with us. We can't just say, oh, that's fabulous, and forget about it. We need to make sure that we do this, that we remember, and then we infuse that into our instruction. This is tried and true, more than 20 years old. I can tell you that I did it old school long before we did virtual things, and I did it with a card. And like and I'm realizing our virtual people, if I do this, don't know what I'm doing, it's probably a 5x7 card, okay, inches, not centimeters. And they would introduce themselves and say what they wanted to be called, like what's the name, because sometimes people have a name on a roster which is not what they want to be called. So it's important to meet people where they are, call them what they want to be called. I'm good at. What's something they're good at? Occasionally through the years I've had to help somebody because they don't know, but everybody is good at something and we need to call that out. And just in case any of you are going, oh, you know, I need some really solid, like what I can do with this, belonging seems a little squishy to me. I'm not sure that's true of the people in this room, but sometimes people think that. This is a work skill also, being able to say what you're good at and being able to articulate it. So this is day 1, preparing them for that interview. So that is a very solid connection to something that they're going to have to do. It irritates me when. Now, why do I ask that? Building community. You know, when somebody says, it really irritates me when somebody interrupts me. Okay, let's talk about that. Let's talk about being a good community member means that you're respectful of the other person in your classroom. It irritates me when someone is disrespectful. We can talk about that. So it's a great opportunity to kind of lay the groundwork of what this classroom is going to be like. I will tell you, my all-time favorite, and there's probably been 1,000, but my favorite all-time, it irritates me when someone adds water to the soap dispenser and waters it down. Not sure that that was really important to know for that classroom, but it gave us a good laugh, which is also part of community, is having fun, right? So it's okay. When I'm learning something new, I like to. I mean, how valuable is that? On day 1, a student says, I like to do this. Now, they may not use our teacher words, but they can still tell you what works for me. And this may be a complete newsflash that it's okay to like something in a different way that's different than what other people like. That is fine. And not only that, that's part of advocating for yourself. And later, you know, that's something you can build on also is, wow, I really like this. And so it helps me to learn. So I'm going to start asking for this, or I'm going to start putting myself in a place where I can be able to interact with information in the same way. Now, one other thing I'm going to add about that, because think about for a second, I want to relate this back to you. How many of you already ask a question like that? How many of you ask, like, how do you like to learn? Okay, yeah, some of you are shaking your hands. So that's part of belonging because, again, I can't tell you how many learners over the years really don't know that there's different ways to learn. Like, that's fabulous for them to know that, oh, I just thought there's a big difference between I need that information written down so I can look at it, or I need to hear it, then, oh, I just can't learn. I haven't been successful. I dropped out. Like those, how different is that? Letting them know there are different ways and that's okay. And not only that, as we change, because we're human beings, and that's why we want to teach humans first, content second, is that sometimes how we like to learn changes. I can tell you through the years how I learn has changed a little bit. I like to see it. That's used to always be my answer, but now I really need to do it, especially with tech stuff. It's changed so much, and I don't want to get left behind, so I have to try it. I have to do it all the time. So that's another part of our world. Okay. Also, just kind of framing it, this is something else that we've used through the years with our adult ed students and then also with teachers, and that we're co-investigators, equal partners. Setting the stage from day 1 that we are partners in your learning. What a difference that is as well. That means that me as a learner have an active role. Students through the years, I've had a number of students who think that learning is, I'm going to open their heads up, figuratively. Disclaimer, I've never opened anyone's head, okay? But open it up. Me as a teacher is going to pour that knowledge in. They're going to soak it up and we're going to close it up again. And so it's like very passive. But that is not how learning is. It's about, as I said before, what's your why? What do you want to get from it? How are you going to pay attention and find, find what you need in order to be successful. Same with our learners, that they're co-investigators, equal partners, and we remind them of that every day. What a difference. And so now the difference also is if I don't come, if I can't show up, and I've given you all kinds of ways that you could interact, then you know that you have to play your part. Are you going to take that hand down for me so that I don't screw it up? Okay, thank you. Nope, you're good. You're good. No, you're good. You're good. All right. Now we're moving right on to chit chat, which is Tara's territory.
And virtual attendees, real quick, I just want to say something. It's the first session on Monday, and we should have reminded everyone, if you can use the Whova chat, the Zoom chat is disabled on our end, and I've noticed that some of you are using Zoom features like the hand and such. If you have a question or something to add, if you can go on the right in the Whova panel, there's a little thing that says chat, and that's the chat that we can see. So please feel free. We'd love to hear from you. So for everyone here, I'm talking to you with my PD hat on. That's my full-time job at the Southern Illinois Professional Development Center. I'm still also able to teach, which is so awesome. And this is from my most recent class that I've taught, which is an ESL conversation class. So in terms of replicable practices, I want to share how we've used this in a recent PD training, and also how I've used it in my ESL class, just for some ideas. And again, I know everyone wants to leave with some things that you can try. That's what we're all here for. So this is my chit chat. So with my students, we get to talk about what does chit chat mean. Those are important skills to have: polite conversation, not deep, we go through all those things. And I always have a chit chat up when the students come in the room. So I have it up on the projector. That way when they come in, they have some ideas about what to talk about. They can hopefully start thinking in English and warming up their brains. We sometimes note like, okay, everyone, this is in the past tense, so let's try to make sure we answer in the past tense. That really helps. So we kind of talk about some things like that. Sometimes I'll put in some greater pieces that we're trying to weave through our conversation classes, like talking about test taking skills or career planning or goal setting, things like that. And now this is a question that we added and used when we had a recent training about UDL. So we talked about chit chat as a replicable practice for those teachers in their classrooms, but then we did the chit chat and added, how has UDL entered your mind since we saw you last? This is a cohort training, a series of meetings. So we had the first meeting where we talked about UDL, and then we put this question up when we met the next time. So we were able to also extend that to use that in the classroom. So sentence starters can really promote a sense of belonging for all in the classroom. You can get people talking in your class. You can connect it to content that was maybe from last time or prior knowledge. So something to think about. And I'll have to add on the fly right here, last night when we were at dinner, one of the people, we went to the ANN dinner, we were invited, we're outside math people, and we got invited to the Numeracy Network dinner. It was really fun. And someone he had these little papers with questions on them. And we're all from different states, we're from different backgrounds, some ABE, some ELL teachers, all administrators, PD people, and he had all these little questions, and they kind of served as sentence starters. And to be honest, it was really fun, and it promoted a sense of belonging in the group. So if that could happen at a random dinner, think about the power of those conversation type questions in a meeting or in your classroom. And you can use it for so many things to really extend the learning, but to also promote that sense of belonging. So something to think about, and something that's worked out awesome for us and for me in my classroom. So, and if anyone would like to share how they would use it, we more than welcome that conversation. So speaking of welcome, we talked about virtual learning communities, everyone. And like I said, we've been using these for staff, administrators, teachers, career navigators all throughout the state a lot over the last couple of years. And we've really kind of honed in on certain topics. And also this year, we very intentionally added language to promote belonging. So let's think about how we could do that with our staffs and our students. Just by saying, all are welcome. ICAPs serve all these students, instructors, admin, staff working with ICAPs. Everyone is welcome here. So our language is so important for promoting belonging. So if you start a learning community or even in your classroom, where could you have signage or that language that your students see? Everyone's welcome here. So just some things to think about. We really wanted people to feel like they belong, and we noticed for a while it was mostly admin at these meetings because they hear about it, and I think they just think, okay, that a virtual learning community posted by the Professional Development Network has to be for us. But really, we wanted more and more people to come, and it's working. So language is really important. So let's think about, again, a few things. Where could we add some of this welcoming language to really bring people in? We had to, there we go. We had to mention our retention VLC, virtual learning community, because of the title of our session, of course, today. And so this is a promo that goes out in our weekly email that hopefully everyone gets. We really are pushing everyone to sign up for what we call the Pulse. And so this is our retention virtual learning community. And so this one is 4 PD hours. They do some sort of like homework to earn their hours in this virtual learning community. And actually, we shared some of the work that came out of the retention virtual learning community in your notes. So there's a live link. You can see some of the great ideas, the replicable practices that our participants came up with in the retention virtual learning community. So we are posting this for many reasons, to kind of give you an idea of what are some different virtual learning communities you could have for your students, maybe just some different topics that would be helpful for them, for your staff, for the people in your state. Give ideas to your PD. But then also we want you to be able to see some of the great ideas that our educators came up with in the retention virtual learning community. So we shared those links for you as well. Sarah, okay. Oh, virtual attendees, yay.
Okay, we have a quick question. We're going back to your chit chat, a couple of slides. Kimberly wants to know, how long do you run your conversation class for? How many students does this work best? And do you have all levels? And then I'd also love for you to talk a little bit, Tara, just real quickly about the language of a syllabus and how that can set the stage for welcoming.
Absolutely. So really good questions. And for that virtual attendee, we're going to share our emails. And if you'd like, I'd be more than happy to connect you to my dean from that college because he set these conversation classes in motion. We used to run conversations at my program just as like a, come if you want, you don't have to register. Or you're shaking, you probably have something like that maybe, or no, okay. Yeah, but then students kept asking, they loved it, they wanted to come. So we made them actually what we'd consider like auxiliary classes. So they have to be enrolled in a regular, if you will, ESL class on Monday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday, however you run it. And if they apply and they have to be approved, they can sign up for one off day a week. So it's once a week for 3 hours is where we run that conversation class. And it runs the whole time as all our regular classes. We do 8-week sessions. We have a curriculum. And we do have all levels. We split them up into 3 levels. So like NRS 1 through 3, they're together, 4 through 6. Okay, so we have the 3 levels. And then how many students? So typically in the classes, they're between 8 and 16 people in the conversation classes. And so they've been really great. They count for their attendance hours because they're auxiliary classes. So again, that kind of situation with the attendance and the policies and everything, I know that my dean would be more than happy to explain. We're still under the leadership of the same dean that started those classes. And then he conversation classes are on Tuesdays, and then students can also sign up for one more auxiliary option, and those are computer classes. Same schedule, same idea in terms of the grouping, and for retention and persistence purposes, again, students have to apply, and they do have to be approved by their regular ESL teacher to be in the auxiliary classes, because if we're going to run them, we really want to make sure that people are coming, you know, and they all go into our attendance hours and everything. So I hope that helps. So, yeah. And then Sarah, inclusive language in the syllabi. So we do a lot of work with IETs and also with teachers across the state, and I'm a big believer in the syllabi. How many of you have found out you were teaching a class within the week before the class? Because that's how we roll in education. You know, we have 6 different types of classes that we teach at most programs. We have IETs, bridge classes, ELL, ABE, ASE. What if you're given a syllabus that explains to you and the student, this is what type of class this is. These are the goals. Everyone's welcome here. We want to hear about how you want to learn. If both information about what you're doing, somewhat of an agenda, and that welcoming language is on that syllabus, it's sustaining for the class, it's sustaining for the students, and having that living syllabus where students can follow along with that agenda and go back to that language is really powerful. And so we've made that part of conversation classes and such as well. IETs are integrated education and training classes. So you all have IETs, you know, around the country. We call IETs, ICAPs, they're the same thing. So, wonderful. So we also, I told you about some examples that we shared from our retention VLC participants. We also wanted to share some ideas that came out of our supporting student success pathway training. So the idea of a pathway training is a replicable practice in itself. What it is basically it's trainings that we have for teachers to earn their PD credits, and they're grouped by topic. So we have a supporting student success pathway training. We have standards training that are considered pathway training, so ELL standards trainings, ABE, ASE standards trainings. We have a data pathway training, and then we have transitions focused instructor training as well. So people who are teaching like bridges and ICAPs and career navigators, there's a career navigator pathway training. So that in itself is replicable. And you're welcome to take a look at that. So we just wanted to explain a little bit of what that is all about. And in the supporting student success pathway training, we focus on UDL. So a lot of what we're doing, and it's a lot about promoting belonging and retention, and it's really focused on UDL, providing options, again, for how we represent material to our students. So not just a video or not just bulleted lists, but both, because then they can pick what works for them in that regard. If I'm going to be, you know, fixing my garbage disposal, I want a video because I have no idea what I'm doing. But, you know, if I'm going to try putting my slides up on my computer, like I don't, those options are available to me both times. You know what I mean? So it's that our participants take a combination of classes on our learning management system. So those are asynchronous. They can do it at the time that works best. It's worth 1 hour of PD credit. And then they start the cohort training where we have a couple of meetings on Zoom and people share their work. It's really great. So we're going to share a couple of examples from that. So we just wanted to like take a minute to talk about how that's replicable, but then also tell you what are we talking about with this pathway training. So now we get to the fun part, which is our participants' awesome work. So here's a question from one of those learning management system classes. We put our PD courses, there's tons of 1 hour PD courses on our learning management system. It's called iLearn. It's basically like a Moodle site. So here's the sample journal question that we have in our Reaching and Teaching All. In the course, how can you use these concepts to reach and teach all students? How can you promote your belonging in your program or your classroom? So again, I won't read this to you, but we just thought we'd share this awesome answer. Oopsies. This is touchy, but I'm going to try to move this. Let me see if I can hide this. Woo! There we go. That'll go away. So now we want to hear from you for a minute. We can think about this, kind of break it down and share. So what practices mentioned in her quote here do you already do? Or what could you do more of? We'd love to just kind of hear some ideas. What are you already doing that she mentions here? What could you do more of? Thank you. And thank you for talking into the microphone. That way the virtual people can hear.
So at our center, we actually have students come back who have graduated from our program and speak to other students. And we have a set of questions that we ask them, basically to motivate those who are still there. They're always saying, don't give up, keep going. They give them tips about taking the test. And just so that that's coming from other students, that's powerful to retaining those who are still there. And then the other thing is that we do motivational Monday. So motivational Mondays. And so every Monday, an instructor comes up with an activity or something that we give to the students, and we have conversations. It could be something that they read, or it could be something that we just discuss that is meant to going.
Sharing. And let me just point out, this is why I love these sessions when we talk. There's so many replicable practices right in there. Like, for example, a lot of us have students come back and talk, but just the idea of, could we add a set of questions that's our standard that will encourage them to really talk about topics that we'd like to share with our students? That's such a great idea. Thank you. That would be one thing that everyone could add, and it could really tighten up and sharpen that process for everyone. And then Motivational Mondays. It's a fun name. It really helps people to feel like they belong and to get going for the week. I love it.
We are starting the conversation around restorative circles to start each classroom. We have our first professional development later this week. And I'm a huge proponent. I really think that it's a great opportunity to engage students in the learning process and develop a sense of community.
That is so wonderful. I love that idea. And again, something replicable. Who could we bring in, from our community to help us with this? Let's lift all the voices and get people involved. Yes, thank you.
I actually had one by accident because we had an assignment that the student wrote a letter to the teacher of something they wanted us to know. And we learned, and it's negative, but it was beneficial. The student told us about past trauma and how when people raise their voice in the classroom, it is a trigger for him. We had no idea. And so now the way we run the classroom when he's there in general is much more organized and perceptive to those kind of needs. So it was an accident, but it worked very, very well.
Thank you for sharing, and kudos to your program and that teacher for allowing that sense of belonging to the point that that student felt that he could share that, because not all students are there, and you've provided that platform. That's what we're trying to get at, to create those spaces. He felt safe to share that, and you reacted, so that is awesome. Awesome, awesome.
One thing I think that I've learned through the years of teaching is we're given curriculum and we have to cover from A to Z in this amount of time, and I've realized that's not what's best for the student. And so, like last night when we were having dinner and conversation, what is the end goal? So now I've learned to be comfortable with adjusting that it's okay you didn't complete this project because you're working towards that test. You work on this, you work on this, you work on this, and it's I gave myself permission to change things up and not have to be so structured so I can help the students meet their end goal.
And that is so powerful. Thank you for sharing. And thank you also. Think of the idea of like mentors. I know she has a mentee. When some people start teaching, they don't know that. Especially if you come from outside education, you don't know that you are not allowed, you are allowed to not do that project if that student needs the time to focus on their GED. But if you have like a mentoring situation in your program where a seasoned teacher tells someone that, gives them that permission, well, you got to get to know your students and where they're at with their goals and how they're handling everything. And if you don't do all that, that's okay. We have their curriculum for a reason. Please try. It's designed to help with their GED test, but if they don't do that, it's okay. So thank you so much for sharing.
So a lot of our GED students are in recovery, and we like try to celebrate that, like, oh, I've been sober for a year or whatever, and we like every quarter we do a celebration for everybody. But we also know like some days learning isn't their priority, right? Like you're here, like it's okay if you're not going to do the assignment today, you're just here, right? You're not out using, you're here, you know what I mean? Like, and that's okay. Like, as long as you're here and we're here to support you, that's okay.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. And again, the replicable practice, the words, sharing that, saying that, making sure that the students know that and they really feel that idea that you're teaching the people and not the content, like we talked about, which is so awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. We really appreciate it, and it's giving us all ideas. That's why I love these sessions. It's so inspiring. Here's something else, and actually we brought this up a little bit earlier, part of this quote. And so I want to tell you the rest of it and then tell you what we shared in your notes, because please use it. This comes from such a passionate teacher. She's awesome. So for one of her assignments, in order to help myself and students, she developed a survey for all of them to take when they start the class. And this is all about what can I do to help you succeed. And so this is a quote that she got. This is the rest of that quote. And one of her students said this. I wish you would have been my teacher in high school, because I might have actually finished if someone had just asked me what I needed to succeed. So we shared her survey. She said, please share it. I want people to be able to use it. I spent time creating it. So feel free to adapt it and use it for yourself. It's really focused on how they learn best. That's where she was at with her survey. So adapt it. Oops, there we go. All right. We're going to break this one down over the next couple of slides. We also shared her slides that she made. This is from a math teacher. We wanted to include the math people, and she really felt strongly about math can also, she teaches math, and people need to feel belonging in the math classrooms. We need to improve retention, and so she really broke it down and took a look at this. And so I'm going to just jump to the next slide because, again, you can see all the slides. We just wanted to point out, which parts of this really promotes belonging in the classroom. She gave us a little background of, she has diverse learners. They have the background knowledge, but they don't recognize the relevance in the classroom and also, most importantly, to their real lives. And she wants to make math less intimidating and really focus on what the students already know when they're approaching concepts, and to work to avoid or to break down, language barriers. So she really focused on basically different ways that you could do a KWL in math. Like, that's an old concept, but why are we doing it? How can I do it better to promote belonging in the classroom? So she really also found that even after all this, she could provide more variety in assessment, mapping connections, looking ahead, like the big picture of what they're trying to get to and what the focus is of the lesson. She put in a lot more discussion and really focusing on that background knowledge. And how does she do that? This teacher teaches online, by the way. Do we have any online teachers? No, okay. Virtual people, feel free to add in. So we tried to make it as best as we could. She went through this whole KWL situation with her math lesson online. So she took a lot of time making sure that students knew how to use This is with the Zoom whiteboard. I thought it was, what's the thing that I loved so much that went away? Yes, I loved Jamboard. I was so sad about that. But look, I am. I thought it was awful, you know, when that went away. But she actually was able to recreate a Jamboard looking thing on her Zoom screen. And so she also took a lot of time, just to point out, talking to students about why she was doing this. Because really, a lot of my students I know would be like, oh my gosh, I don't want to move these little notepads. I'm here to learn. I'm here to talk. But she said, this is a type of exercise. When we get ready to go running, what do we do first? Typically, if we're smart, we'll stretch and do a warm-up first. You can think of K and W as your stretch and warm-up before a learning experience, and then she goes on to explain the rest of it. So she has words in here on the screen, and she said them to her students to really hone in. This is why we're doing this. That part is worth it. It's worth it at meetings with our staff. It's worth it with our students. So we always have to remember, share the why of what we're doing, always with people. And Sarah. And again, her slides, her full slides with all the explanations and everything, we put them in your notes so you could see those. And again, please use them. Feel free to contact us. We can put you in touch with her. She's super passionate.
So before we get to this slide of another quote from one of our fabulous teachers, I just want to reiterate that Heather talked about, and some of you talked about, meeting students where they are and having permission to, you know, maybe change it up for that day if that's what they need. Let me relate that really quickly. I talked to my doctor because she put me on a medication that had some bad side effects, and I said, I don't like these because this is what, and before that I'd been on a different medication, okay? And she looked at me and she says, well, I can put you back on the other one. I was like, I was ready for the fight, right? Because I thought she was gonna say, no, I'm the doctor and I know what's best, and she is the doctor and she does know what's best. But she said to me, ultimately, the best medication for you is the medication that you will take. And I was like, oh, I'm remembering that one, because that's true for us as educators also. You know, we may have some beautiful content, but if they're not ready to hear it today, if they're not ready to learn this in this particular day because they're a human being and something's going on and they have trauma in their life, or, you know, fill in the blank of all the things that happen to human beings, all the things that happen or have happened to our students, or someone's being too loud in the classroom, it's a trigger, all of those things. That's why we need to know. That's why we need to let them know that our heart is to make sure that they belong and that they feel comfortable. And that's part of it as well. So Amy Elston from the College of DuPage is another fantastic teacher. And she, in our training, did some of the homework for that. And I love this quote. Look at every single one of those. You can see everything that she wrote. But I am going to read this because I think it is just so powerful. I can also give a specific example of a student who sat silent in class, did not write, never wanted to participate, did not complete work, but once he was giving options and encouragement, because part of UDL is making sure that there's multiple means of representation of how the material and multiple means of action and expression, how you tell your teacher that you know, or show your teacher that you know what they need you to know. You know, there's more than one way than just taking a test. So when she gave him options and encouragement and felt part of a community, he completely changed and has flourished. He arrives early, asks questions, shares answers, and reads independently now. His story is truly a result of UDL being implemented. I cannot tell you how much he has changed and grown. Now, UDL isn't magic, but it is the power of a human being met in a place that is, you know, saying, yes, this I'm valued, this is I'm seen, I'm going to be taught in a way that works for me. All right. Earlier, when some of you were sharing, we talked about students experiencing trauma. One of our virtual learning communities, Tara told you about a couple of different ones. One is supporting student success, that's the old S3. And we had a teacher and she's from the Polish American Association, which is a community-based organization in Chicago. And Aga came and shared with us a discussion on trauma-informed practices to help students support our learners. specifically about like how to set up your classroom, how to find out if there's something that really is going to be a trigger. And actually, I'm going to go to the next slide because this is from Aga. This is one of her slides from her presentation that she talked about some very specific ways to support teachers is preparing a syllabus with attention to possible triggers within the content. I think that is just a very welcoming and understanding of where people could be coming from. Fostering rapport among learners. We talk about building community. That's part of UDL also. And it is important. Class is a safe harbor. It's, you know, when I was in the adult ed classroom, which I've not taught specifically adult education, I'm doing training now, but I always told my students, this is your safe place. This is your sanctuary. You can be here. And so I think that's really important that they hear those words and know that you mean that by the actions that you act. Okay, so let's see, how much time do we have left? We don't have 5 minutes. Do we want to just tell them about this and maybe and finish up? Tara, what do you think? Okay, so we are going to, one of my things that keeps me up at night is that I'm afraid I'm not going to have enough content. And people are going to, oh, she didn't have enough to say. So I'm going to just own up to the fact that clearly we had too much content. But we're not going to apologize for that because there's plenty of links for you. There's plenty of things. Tara and I are going to give you our contact information. There is nothing we like better than talking about supporting teachers, supporting learners. It's like UDL. You can tell that we're UDL nerds through and through. So also, I'm going to put a shameless plug in right now. On Wednesday morning at 8 o'clock, we're going to be doing a session on microlearning, and there's a lot of pieces in there for teachers we're going to talk about and for PD people. So please come join us again. But one of the things that we have that we'd love, if this speaks to you, we are doing some action research. UDL for all learners, what we found out was that there really isn't any adult education research on the positive effects or negative effects for that matter of UDL. So we're like, well, let's just do it, right? We've had a little bit of success. We'd love to have more people come along. So if you're interested in that, there also is a link there to a video because we wanted learners to hear about UDL because teaching isn't something we do to people. Remember, we're co-investigators, equal partners, so we're coming along, we're gonna help them learn how to learn so when they're past us, they still keep learning because we want them to be lifelong learners. So there is a very short video that I encourage you to go and look at. Use it with your students. It's helping students understand what UDL is and applying it for themselves. So that is there for you if you want to use it. And also, remember I mentioned that there was bonus content. That was the way of saying we may not get to something. But that is, let's go ahead, about, uh-oh. Yep, okay. So there's a couple of videos for you to watch. You can do that on your own. You'll hear the sweet sound of Tara's voice, and then you'll just feel like you're with her again, and that'll be awesome. Anyway, let's go on to the, okay. There's a couple of slides at the end that is about having meetings that foster belonging.
And I was going to say real quick, this one too. This came from a transitions coordinator chat. It's a monthly meeting that we have online for career navigators, replicable practice idea. But also take a look at this video. You could do it for your class or your program. She really worked on making their orientation and their informational videos online more applicable. So across different languages and also like welcoming images and things like that. So please take a look. And then on to the meetings. Please don't start YouTube video.
All right, so I'm just going to tell you on these last things. Again, there are links if you want to learn more about it. There is actually a recording. We did this training specifically requested by our WIOA partners, how to run an effective meeting. We're like, anytime they ask us as Title II to give them information, we're like, we're on it, because we love that. And so I partnered with an adult ed administrator, and we kind of tag teamed it, and we did this whole thing about how to run an effective meeting. So the slides are in your, and we're gonna also upload the slides to Hoove after this, so they'll be there. But also, it's just some really good foundational information about running a meeting. And one of the things that I'm going to, I'm gonna say is, no, I'm gonna say that, is making sure that everybody gets to give input. Have you ever been to a meeting where you're like, am I supposed to be here? Do I have a purpose? That's not what we want. We want everybody to say, oh, I know why I'm here, and I know what part I can play, and I'm going to play it. I mean, what a difference that is. So, okay. Since we're at the end, and that was it, action items, feedback, assign parts of the meeting to others. Again, I know that was too fast. If you want to know more about that, happy to share that with you. And also, please join us on Wednesday morning. But here's the final part, and we do have a few more fabulous prizes left in the room. And virtual people, we're just sending you goodwill. I'm sorry that I don't have an actual prize to hand to you, but one idea of what you will do to increase belonging in our last minute. And virtual attendees, we'd love for you to put something in the chat, but somebody, what are you going to do? What's one thing? You don't have to make it big, just one thing that you're going to do. Here we go, back in the back.
I actually like her Motivational Mondays idea. Awesome. I'm going to steal it.
I love it too. I'm thinking, yeah, we already have a Friday feature. We need Motivational Monday in Illinois as well. So thank you for sharing that. Anybody else? One thing that you're going to do? Yes.
Get students songs for a class playlist for coffee hour once in a while.
I love that. A playlist.
Identify the goal of the meeting or the day or the agenda.
Yeah. What's the why for everything? No matter what you're doing, even for yourself, what's the why? Why am I doing this?
Thank you from a virtual attendee, asking learners how they learn best. They're going to start asking their learners, what do you need? How do you learn best? Love it. Anyone else? I can repeat it in the microphone.
I like creating virtual communities to allow the students to interact with their instructor or with other students.
Fantastic. And you guys, thank you so much for choosing to spend your first session with us. Thank you for the work that you are doing. You are making a difference, and we appreciate you. Thank you to all of our virtual attendees for sharing your time with us. Our contact information is here, but it's also on the note sheet. And if anybody wants to pick up an extra paper doc, please do so. Or I got a few more prizes if you're, But anyway, thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming.